I wanted to talk to you about scourging. It was quite different from being beaten with a rod or a normal whip, which Paul had experienced a lot of. This, you hear scourging and you think, oh, there you go, getting beaten again. No, that's not what this was. It was really, really bad. It was so severe that a lot of people died as a result of scourging. If they survived it, many were crippled for life as a result. And the horrific treatment that these people got, and you think, how could that even be allowed? But it was only done to non-Roman citizens. So we've got a little bit of a problem here, because we're going to learn, we already know, Paul was a Roman citizen. So as we're reading with Neri, chapter 11 in 2 Corinthians, verses 24 through 28, I want you to think about yourself in terms of what Paul is saying. So go ahead, Neri, please, if you would.
2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 24 to 28 says, 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches.
Okay, yeah. Boy. And Paul was called of God, you guys. Who wants to be called of God? You know what? Guess what? We all are. We're all called. But have any of us suffered the way Paul suffered for the sake of Jesus Christ? And so when we start feeling sorry for ourselves, which I have been known to do, I have to remind myself of this passage right here. Woe is me, and this happened, and that happened, and oh dear. But yet, God's grace is sufficient. God's grace was sufficient for Paul through all of that. God had a purpose for every bit of that. And whatever rocky situation we find us in right now, oh, this is hard to say, and it's hard to receive, but it's the truth. God loves every single one of us as much as he loved Paul. And he wants to use us every bit as much as the Apostle Paul. If he's not, guess who's holding back? It's not God, is it? It's us. So let's look back in Acts in chapter 22 still, verses 25 and 26. This is where Paul reveals his citizenship. And as they bound him with thongs, Paul said to the centurion who stood by, I love Paul, because at this moment he decides to tell them. First, he asks the question, is it lawful for you to scourge a man who is a Roman? Okay. And uncondemned. He hasn't even had a fair trial. It's a rhetorical question, ladies. He's not really asking a question that he wants to be answered. He's just asking it in terms of, You thought about the fact that I might be a Roman citizen? When the centurion heard that, he went and told the commander, saying, "Take care what you do, for this man is a Roman." Oh, okay, that changes everything for Paul. His hands were tied around a pole, a wooden pole. His back was stripped down, ready for the flogging, for the scourging. And he spoke up just in the nick of time before that happened, before his brutal beating. And he was ready for it if that's what was going to come. And they did those scourgings for as long as it took for them to admit that the charges against them were legit. And I think as some people, probably the really weak ones, would probably just admit to doing things that they hadn't done just so they could not be beaten, be scourged anymore. Okay, yeah, I did it, just stop. But Paul was ready to take the whole punishment. But it was at that moment that Paul announced his Roman citizenship. And the reaction was immediate, because it was a serious violation for someone to claim to be Roman when they were not. There was a due process, and if they were discovered to have been lying about this, they could possibly have been killed. So nobody is going to claim to be a Roman when they're not, because it would not behoove them. So Acts 22, verses 27 through 29, the commander questions Paul about his citizenship. And he asks him, he says, "Tell me, are you a Roman?" And Paul said, "Yes." And the commander answered, "Well, with a large sum I obtained this citizenship." And Paul said, "But I was born a citizen." Then immediately those who were about to examine him withdrew from him, and the commander was also afraid after he found out that he was a Roman. Ooh, and because he had bound him, because it was even illegal, ladies, not only to scourge a Roman, but to bind one up, which they had already done. They hadn't done the scourging yet, but they had bound Paul. And Paul probably looked terrible. Paul probably didn't look like all that. And the commander would have wondered how someone who could look like that could purchase his citizenship. And I think that's why he pulled the citizenship card like he did, that, oh, it cost me a very large sum to obtain Roman citizenship. And the implication was that Paul must have purchased his very cheaply, because after all, look at him, he doesn't look like that much. But then Paul comes back with, "I didn't have to purchase mine. I was born a citizen." I looked into that and I found out that, I'm thinking, how was he a Roman? And what I uncovered was that his parents or his grandparents must have been awarded the rights of citizenship somehow, maybe for having done something good on behalf of Rome. We don't know, but we do know that he was indeed a Roman citizen. Paul was really a unique guy, just like you. You're unique. You guys are unique. You have a whole different set of circumstances, a different DNA, different personality, different gifts, different background, different experiences than the lady sitting next to you on this screen. You're unique, just like the Apostle Paul was unique. And he wants to use you, just as he used Paul with his unique background. Being a Roman, he could speak Hebrew. He was a Jew. He had been raised, under Gamaliel. He had all these unique characteristics, and God used them, just like he's going to use yours, like he has used yours, like he is using yours right now. In verse 30, the Roman commander arranges for a hearing of the charges against Paul. Finally, they're going to do it right. They're going to give the man a hearing before the Jewish council. And this was, Paul had been a member of the council. So the next day, it says in verse 30, because he wanted to know for certain why he was accused by the Jews, he released him from his bonds. The commander, it's talking about, when it says he, it's talking about the commander. And he commanded the chief priests and all their council to appear, and brought Paul down and set him before them. And so Luke is presenting the Roman commander here as a really fair guy. He's really wanting to get to the bottom of all this. Though he did not understand the reason for the dispute, he really seemed to work hard for a resolution. And that's to his credit, I think. Paul would logically think that this was the opportunity of a lifetime to preach to those he loved so much and those that he knew so well. And he was finally getting a chance to do that. He had to go through some hard times, though, to get there, didn't he? So think about what it is you're waiting for. You may have to be sanded down a little bit. We, myself included, may have to be sanded down a little bit before God says, okay, you're ready for me to give to you this that you want so badly. And I want to close with reading Acts 9, verses 15 through 16.
But the Lord said to him, Go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name before Gentiles, kings, and children of Israel. For I will show him how many things he must suffer for my name's sake.
So this was at Saul's conversion. And he spoke right there. This is in red in my Bible. This is Jesus talking. I will show him how many things he must suffer for my name's sake. And that last passage that we read in, was it 2 Corinthians? He went through the list of all the things that he had suffered for Jesus' sake. And God had revealed a plan to Paul that very night. Paul, ladies, was a chosen vessel to bear his name, just as each one of us here tonight is. He says, for I will show him how many things he must suffer for my sake. How many things we must suffer for his sake. Paul knew the general plan. He didn't know exactly. God didn't say, you're going to be shipwrecked, you're going to be whipped and beaten and flogged. He gave him a general plan that this is what's going to happen. And just like us, we don't know either. We don't know how it's all going to work out. We don't know what all we're going through right now. We don't know how that's going to end. Paul didn't know. There are many things, and I'm not talking just about the coronavirus, but many other situations in our lives that maybe we don't even want to talk about. I know some of you are going through some pretty rough times right now and questioning what God is doing. But we need to take comfort in knowing that whatever it is, he is sovereign. He is still the highest ruler. He is on his throne. And just like Paul, all we have to do is trust God, like every other believer that ever walked the face of this earth. That's hard to do sometimes, isn't it? We want our will, and we want, like Paul, to explain to him why he needs to do things our way. But when it's all said and done, we need to abandon ourselves completely into his hands and trust.